Joe's still missing in the present, her family's still shattered, and now the preview for Lioness Season 3, Episode 3 is telling us the real danger might not be some foreign adversary at all. It might already be sitting inside the Lioness program itself. Episode 3 is titled The Bear is Infected, and if that title alone doesn't put you on edge, the preview material backing it up absolutely will. So let's break down everything we know heading into Episode 3, what the setup is teasing, and why this might be the episode where the whole season pivots. This is a full breakdown of everything revealed ahead of Lioness Season 3, Episode 3, including the official title and synopsis. If you want to go in completely blind, this is your exit. Somebody inside the Lioness program may have sold them out. Episode 3 is where the hunt for that answer finally begins. Let's start with the title itself, because it's doing a lot of heavy lifting. The Bear is about as blunt a stand-in for Russia as you can get, and pairing it with Infected strongly suggests this episode isn't about hunting down an external enemy, it's about rooting out something that's already gotten inside the wall. Given everything that's happened so far, that fits disturbingly well. If Episode 2 planted the idea that Alexei's extraction may have been a trap from the very beginning, then Infected starts to read less like a metaphor for the Russian side of this conflict, and more like a warning about how deep the compromise has spread on the American side too. A body doesn't get called infected because of a wound on the surface. It's infected because something's already inside spreading, and the people trying to treat it don't know how far it's gotten yet. This is the part of the preview material that should worry you the most. As of the setup heading into Episode 3, Joe is still missing, and worse, her captors have already stripped her tracking device and vanished before her own team could close in on her location. That's a significant escalation from where Episode 2 left off. It means whoever took her wasn't improvising. They planned for exactly this contingency, which tells you they understood the Lioness program's tracking and recovery protocols well enough to defeat them. That's not the profile of a random opportunistic grab. That's the profile of someone who's had eyes on this operation from the inside, which loops right back around to that title. If Joe's location was compromised specifically because someone leaked it, then finding her isn't just a recovery mission anymore. It's the first real piece of evidence in figuring out who inside the program can't be trusted. This is exactly the kind of setup and speculation breakdown we do for every episode of Lioness Season 3. If you want the full Episode 3 review the second it drops, subscribe and turn on notifications now. The official line on this episode is short but loaded. Joe confronts a breach, and it pushes the team into a dangerous gambit specifically designed to flush out whoever's been feeding information to the other side. That phrasing is interesting because it implies this isn't going to be a quiet internal investigation. It's going to be active and provocative, the kind of move where the team essentially has to bait a trap of their own to see who reacts. Given how careful and deliberate this season's antagonists have looked so far, that's a genuinely dangerous strategy. If there really is an infiltrator inside the program, tipping your hand that you're hunting for them is exactly the kind of move that could get someone killed before the truth comes out. It also raises an uncomfortable question the show seems to be setting up on purpose. What happens if the person orchestrating the breach isn't some low-level analyst, but someone close enough to Joe, Kaitlyn, or Byron that exposing them costs the team more than just operational security? Setting a trap for a mole only works if you're certain who isn't one. Right now, nobody on this team can say that for sure. There's another detail worth flagging heading into this episode. 2 new recurring cast additions have joined the show this season, and their timing lines up almost perfectly with this breach storyline heating up. New faces showing up right as an infiltrator plot kicks into gear is rarely a coincidence on a show like this, and it's easy to imagine at least one of them being connected either to the mole hunt itself or to whoever's actually been pulling strings from outside the agency. Whether they turn out to be allies, assets, or the exact infiltrator the team is hunting for, their introduction this early in the season suggests they're going to matter a lot more than a passing subplot. It's worth remembering where this theory actually started. Episode 2 planted the idea that Alexei's extraction back in Ukraine may not have been the clean win it looked like, and that the whole operation might have been engineered to draw Joe's team into a trap from the start. If Episode 3 is built around actively hunting an infiltrator, that strongly suggests the show isn't dropping that theory. It's building the entire hunt around confirming it. And if that's the direction this is heading, then everyone who touched the Donetsk operation, Kyle and Oleksandra, even people inside Kaitlyn's own chain of command, becomes a name worth circling. The scariest version of this storyline isn't a stranger feeding intel to Russia from the shadows. It's someone who was in the room for that extraction, someone the team has already trusted with their lives once. Given how Episode 2 positioned both of them, Kaitlyn buried in damage control and Byron sitting across from a very calm, very dangerous adversary, it's worth thinking about what root out infiltrators actually looks like from their side of the operation. Kaitlyn is the one with the clearance to authorize a bait operation like this in the first place, which puts her in the uncomfortable position of having to trust the very system she now has reason to doubt. If she greenlights a plan built specifically to expose a leak, she's implicitly accepting that the leak could be someone she's worked alongside for years, maybe someone she's personally vouched for. That's not a small ask for a character who spent this entire season trying to hold the agency together from the inside. Byron's position might be even trickier. His conversation with the adversary in Episode 2 wasn't just tense for tension's sake. It planted the idea that whoever's applying pressure from the outside already knows exactly who to lean on. If Byron himself becomes a person of interest in this breach investigation, even briefly, it would track with everything the show has been building toward. Nobody in this circle gets to stay above suspicion just because they've been useful before. It would also put a fascinating spin on that earlier scene, reframing it not as a threat from an outsider, but as confirmation that the outsider already had inside help lined up. Every season of Lioness eventually reaches the point where the external mission and the internal fallout collide, and everything about the setup for episode 3 suggests this is that moment arriving early. The premiere gave us the extraction. Episode 2 gave us the cost of that extraction landing on Joe's doorstep and inside her own home. Episode 3 sounds like it's where the show stops treating those as two separate problems and starts treating them as the same problem, a program that may have been compromised long before anyone realized it, now forced to hunt for the compromise using the very people who might be the compromise. That's a tighter, more claustrophobic kind of tension than a firefight on a foreign border, and if the show commits to it fully, it could end up defining the entire back half of the season. Everything pointing toward episode 3 suggests Lioness is finally ready to answer the question it's been circling since the season premiere. Not who took Joe, but who let them. That's a much harder, much more personal question for this team to sit with. And The Bear is Infected sounds like exactly the kind of title a show reaches for when it wants you bracing for a betrayal from inside the family rather than an enemy at the gate. My biggest question walking into this one is whether the show is bold enough to make the mole someone we've genuinely liked so far rather than a convenient outsider, because that's the version of this story that actually earns the title. That's everything we know heading into Lioness Season 3, Episode 3. Let me know in the comments who you think the infiltrator actually is, and whether you think Joe makes it home before the team even finds their leak. Subscribe so you don't miss the full Episode 3 breakdown the moment it's live. Thanks for watching.